Hello everyone, welcome back to the Lowland Greenhouse here at Carlton Carnivores. We're continuing our little spotlight series featuring another Indochinese Nepenthes species today. This one is also quite uncommon in trade still, but could be more common soon because there are several places that are working on propagating it. This is Nepenthes andamana. Named because the populations that are known, there are only two, so it's relatively rare. Although good news, the species is pretty common at these two locations. But only two populations along the southern Thailand coast, Bangnaga province, along the Andaman Sea, hence Andamana. This is a true lowlander. These guys survive from sea level to about 50 meters, so that's 150, 160 feet above sea level, where year-round temperatures are very warm. They do have, like most of their Indochinese relatives, a monsoonal season that they experience, and as such, they have those thick pyrophytic roots that allow them to survive those dry seasons. But they live in coastal scrub and savanna habitats, grassy open areas, so they get a lot of sunshine all throughout the day, all throughout the year, and grow to about, they have been recorded up to about 9 feet in length, so 3 meters give or take, and that is all growth that can develop within a single year. Usually it would take a couple, so if it's not a terrible drought during the year and there's no fires that go through, the stalled growth will hold out and then they'll continue growing, reaching up to 9 feet in length. Shorter is more common, especially after a fire goes through and they have to resprout from their roots. This species it has very slender linear lanceolate leaves. The leaves can get a little broader than this, but not by a whole lot. Comes down to a very narrow, acute tip, and the base is slightly decurrent down the stem, but not very much, not as pronounced as in some of its relatives. So it clasps the stem about 3/4 of the way around the circumference of the stem, and the sides of the leaves actually extend down just a short ways, but they will not extend all the way down the nodes. The leaves have a very light orange or brown indumentum, so little hairs that cover particularly the edges, the midribs, and the very bases. But this is a species where that covering of hairs is caducous, so it falls off as the leaves age. So on a mature plant, you'll note the stems are always glabrous. They never develop hairs on the stems. But then the rest of the plant, only the very top of the plant will actually have hairs on the leaves. Lower leaves will have pretty much lost all of that. And that is one trait that will distinguish it from its relatives. A lot of other species like Smilesii and Bocarensis and such, they have persistent indumenta, so the hairs that stick around all the time and often cover much more of the plant than this one is. This is a relatively hairless plant. Lower pitchers, quite attractive in my opinion, are up to about 6 inches tall, not the biggest species in Indochina, and they tend to have kind of an ovate lower third to the pitcher. Also, the pitcher outside is very slightly fuzzy, so it's got a nice velvety feel, but a kind of ovate lower third, and then above that it narrows. There's a distinctive hip usually, and then the upper roughly 2/3 is more slender and cylindrical, sometimes slightly inverse funnel shaped because it narrows slightly right below the mouth of the pitcher. And then it has a relatively small and simple rounded mouth and a fairly thick peristome, especially in mature plants. The peristome gets pretty distinctive, noticeable, kind of semi-flattened, more rounded. Some of its relatives, like it's considered closely related to Suratensis, have much more broad flattened peristomes, but this has a fairly broad, mostly rounded peristome, and then relatively narrow, simple wings down the front of the pitcher. Coloration is a little bit variable. The background color is anywhere from green to kind of this orangey red color, and then usually there are fairly large blotches modeling of darker red over that. The interior may be similarly red blotched, or it might be entirely kind of a cream greenish or white. So decently colored. Again, relatively small mouth. That is very distinctive. A lot of its relatives have much broader, either more triangular or teardrop-shaped broad mouths, but because of the narrow top of the pitcher, this has a relatively small mouth. Upper pitchers change quite a bit, much like most of their relatives. They don't stay fat. Instead, they become very slender and cylindrical, roughly the same size, about 6 inches tall, sometimes a little bit taller, but slightly funnel-shaped at the bottom, and usually cylindrical or very narrowly funnel-shaped up through the rest of the pitcher. The wings are lost, and most of the other traits stay more or less the same, other than coloration. The upper pitchers are usually very pale in colors, so greens or yellows with red modeling inside, but usually not a whole lot of red outside of the pitcher. So, relatively nondescript, but a lot of tiny details that separate this from its relatives, which is a fairly common thing in the Indochinese group. It's all the subtleties that separate all these species from each other. And again, this is a species that is from a monsoonal region. If you want to grow it, like most of its relatives, it's fairly easy to grow because it'll tolerate your standard 1-to-1-to-1 sphagnum perlite, and I use cocoa chips to lighten that up. Keep the soil loose and just moist, never really wet, especially because these guys grow in a fairly sandy environment. They like it pretty well drained and hot all the time. Temperatures should never drop below 70 degrees at night, and during the daytime it can go to 85, 90, sometimes even 95 degrees Fahrenheit in their natural habitat. They will tolerate some variation in humidity because, again, during the dry season, that will drop. During the wet season, of course, it can be up to 80, 90% humidity all the time. Keep it in higher humidity if you want to make sure that it acclimates and settles into your conditions before acclimating it to lower humidity. Always water again wait until the soil surface just starts to dry before watering again. And then if you see the plant slow down in growth, especially during summer, the slightly warmer seasons, you can allow the soil to dry to just barely damp, simulating kind of their dormancy season. In cultivation, they usually won't actually go dormant like they might in the wild, but they may stall out, and giving them those seasonal changes may trigger blooming. It is a fairly easy plant to propagate as well. Again, still relatively uncommon in cultivation, but hopefully becoming more common because, like most of its relatives, easy to take stem cuttings, just cut those, cut into sections, and stick that into wet moss or pure water, and give it a few weeks, and you'll see roots starting to develop. Simple flowers, like most species, they're not flashy, but they do have a slight difference in coloration that might distinguish them from their relatives. Mature flowers, the tepals, the little 4 parts that stick out around either the ovary or the stamens, will age to this rich red coloration. A lot of their relatives may stay more green or just barely red tinged. So another trait that you can use to identify this species compared to its relatives. That's about all that I have for this species right now, though. If there's something that I missed, if there's questions that you have, again, feel free to leave those in the comments below, and I'll try and answer where I can. If you enjoy educational videos like this, if you want to learn more about other species, other carnivorous plant groups perhaps, I will be working on getting videos, especially over the winter here, on other groups of carnivores, Utricularia and other sundews that I haven't done, things like that. If you want to learn more, make sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on the black bell so you don't miss anything coming up. Leave likes, share the videos, watch all the way through because that really helps. You can also visit my website, carletoncarnivores.com. There's the blog and database there where I post information in other forms about the plants and animals that I work with. And you can find more photos, videos, tidbits, and such on social media, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, all at Carleton Carnivores. And the time to take to make these videos, edit them, and get them out so that people can view them It does take quite a bit and can be a bit of a financial strain. So if you'd like to help financially support this, you consider becoming a Patreon member at patreon.com/hcarlton. Members there get monthly access to the seed contests that I do, early access to the videos. There is exclusive merch that gets mailed out to members that stick around long enough. And if you don't want to do a monthly subscription, you can donate at Coffee, or you can buy the plants that I sell at my website at the shop there. We also have our merchandise on the shop there, as well as at Teespring. But until next time, I'm Hawken Carlton, and this is Carlton Carnivores.